Hello, it's Teresa again. This time I'm going to show you how to make chocolate fudge cake. Now, chocolate fudge cake is dear to my heart because my mum used to make the most wonderful fudge cake. But then I seem to have made friends with lots of people who've got other recipes. So I'm going to show you the one my mum used to make with a couple of additions. But it is important to remember that if you find another recipe, try it. I've got some that are actually in a block, like a loaf tin, and they're fabulous. But you can't break the biscuits up very finely then, because actually that's part of the texture of the fudge cake. But with this one, you have to bash them to bits until they're very fine. So I'm just going to bash those to bits. Okay, so before I bash the biscuits up to within an inch of their lives, I do have to measure out the right quantities. Now, my mum's original recipe was 7 ounces of biscuits, but because my bowl that I'm going to put them in, it's a bit deeper, I'm going to do half as much again. So I'm sure you can work that out. If it's 7 ounces, half as much again, half of that is 3.5, so 10.5 ounces is the amount I'm going to put in. Now, in recent years, it's taken me a longer time to do recipes because they're all in grams and ounces. So I'm going to just say to you, look it up, check Mr. Google and do a conversion, because I'm sticking to pounds and ounces today. It's not very scientific when you're making the biscuits, breaking the biscuits, I mean. You can put them in a piece of cling film or underneath greaseproof paper to bash them, but actually just putting them in like this and using the end of a rolling pin is really satisfying. Okay, so now I have the digestive biscuits, because I used cheap digestive biscuits. You don't want to use McVitie's for this. McVitie's is only one of the makes of biscuits that are available. You can try something else as well. This is the weighed out chocolate. Now, 4 ounces of chocolate, but as I'm doing the 1.5, it's 6 ounces. And I've melted the margarine that I'm going to use to bind it all together over the top of a saucepan of boiling water, which is called a bain-marie. And in a minute, I'm going to leave a little bit of that margarine in there and put the chocolate in so that can melt too. Once that has all been done, I can then put it all together. So I'll show you what it looks like when I'm putting it together. Oh, but first I'll put the margarine into the dry ingredients. Yum, yum. See you in a moment. Right, now there's all the chocolate all broken up. I have used Sainsbury's own milk chocolate because it's a little bit cheaper than some of the other brands, but it's still got a decent taste to it. But I've also put in some Chococo. Now, Chococo, if you don't know about it, is the most fabulous shop down in Swanage, and also in other places too. And I've used their Madagascar Dark, because if you use too much of the milk chocolate, it can just get a bit yucky, and a bit more cocoa is really good. It's also naturally vegan. So if you're going to be making this for vegans, you might think about using baking block rather than margarine. That's vegan. And perhaps check out your biscuits, although they're usually okay. And then if you go for dark chocolate as well, you're making sure that you are within the vegan premise. It's very easy to adapt. Okay, so now we have the chocolate all beautifully melted and swirled in. Don't leave it too long there because it will start to reform. And here is the dry mixture. Now what I've done is I've added 1.5 ounces of walnuts bashed and 4 dates that I've just picked up and torn apart with my fingers. That's because it's always a good idea to try and put fruit into something. I'll tell you what, the smell is amazing. Utterly amazing. You imagine crushed biscuits, crushed walnuts, and then lovely hot melted chocolate. What could be better? I have to mix this together until it's made a kind of paste, really. Okay, so you can see I've got quite a nice base there. So that's what I'm going to put into the bottom of my, well, it's not going to be cooked in it, it's going to be fridged in it, because this can also be called refrigerator cake. So I've already greased it, as you can see, and now I'm going to just put the first layer in of this. Then I'm going to pop it in the fridge for at least an hour. So I'll see you on the other side. Right, well, this has been in the fridge. I covered it with some greaseproof paper, mainly because anything else might have dripped onto it in our fridge. So many people coming and going through it. But there we go. That's how it looks now. Looks gorgeous, doesn't it? It's a first layer, and now I've got some melted chocolate that I'm going to pour across it. I did add just a tiny weeny bit of baking block to the chocolate, because then that helps it carry on being nice and glossy and not sticking onto the bowl. As we said, I used a bain-marie for that, which is just a saucepan that I am boiling water in with the Pyrex or glass dish on top of it, and that much better than trying to do it in the microwave, because you can watch and see when to take it off the heat when you're doing it over a bain-marie. And I think, unfortunately, microwaves often have little hot spots and cold spots, and if you've got a hot spot, you get something that's very melted and then ends up getting a bloom on it. And if you've got cold spots, the same applies. I'm going to just push it across. Don't really need to worry about it. It's only if your kitchen's on a slant will it just go on its own. But there we go. I'm just going to, you see, I'm just making sure it gets in all the corners. Now, if for some reason you haven't done enough for the chocolate topping, it's okay. You can go back and do it a bit more. Now, sometimes when you're doing a fridge cake, you do the topping with some icing sugar, because it ends up being more of a fudgy substance. But for this recipe, the fudgy substance is the bottom layer, and the chocolate is just the chocolate layer on top. Now, if I wanted to smooth that out, which I don't really, but I would get a spoon and then dip it into boiling water just to be able to gloss it across. But I don't really mind how bumpy and lumpy my chocolate is on top of my chocolate fudge cake, just as long as there is some. Right, now that has to go back in the fridge for a while. It's a good idea to cover it, otherwise it might get too cold and end up with a bloom on it. But once that has set, you've got plenty of time then to cut it and eat it. Happy eating.